The Sixers take on the Hawks Game 6, and that's going to be a 7:30 p.m. Eastern tip-off in Atlanta. The Hawks are up 3-2 in the series. That in mind, though, it's the Sixers who are the 3-point favorite on the road, with the total at 221.5. If you like the Atlanta Hawks to shut things down and advance to the conference finals here, they're plus $1.40 for some money line cash. Now we're 2-0 in our last two Major League Baseball tier package picks on my Patreon website. We're also 4-1 in our last 5 Major League Baseball tier package picks in that very same category. So if you want to see which one of these free picks on my YouTube channel that I'm actually betting on personally, you got to check me out on my website at patreon.com/BrockPage. And we currently have over 1,075 members who are signed up and active on that page. And once again, if you want to see which one of these YouTube picks I'm actually betting on personally, don't forget to check me out on my website at patreon.com/BrockPage. Now, the Hawks have peeled off 2 straight victories to go up 3-2 in the series. A highly improbable turn of events here, but realistically, these guys have been great against the number here in the postseason. 70% against the number in their last 10 playoff games. 26-14 against the spread at the State Farm Arena this year. And as a matter of fact, the Hawks have gone 28-12 straight up as the home team this season, and they're covering the number in 65% of those contests. Trae Young is scoring over 29 points a game in the playoffs, couple of boards and 10 assists a night for Trae. Now the youngster is also shooting 90% from the stripe. Meanwhile, Bogdan Bogdanovic is scoring over 15 points a game in the playoffs himself, 5 rebounds, 2 assists for Bogey. And when you got guys like Clint Capella and John Collins on your roster, it's no wonder these guys are in the top 5 in the NBA in home offensive rebounding. Meanwhile, defensively on the other end of the court here, the Hawks have been pretty stingy here at the State Farm Arena. They're in the top 5 in defensive field goal percentage at home, and they're also holding their opponents to just 33% shooting from beyond the arc in that same category. And with all those factors in mind, there is one final thing to add here. Atlanta's allowing only 108 points per contest on their home court this season. Certainly going to be a tough task for the Sixers. I think a lot of Sixers backers totally overlooked Atlanta in this series. And speaking of Philly, they've got a point guard who averages over 34 minutes a night in the postseason and maybe shoots 4 times tops. And as a matter of fact, Ben Simmons has taken only 4 fourth-quarter shots in Philadelphia's last 4 ball games. Essentially, the Sixers are playing every game with 4 players. The Sixers have also been struggling quite a bit covering the point spread in the postseason. They failed to cover in 4 out of their last 7 ball games. They also have a losing record against the spread when they travel this year. Out of Philly's 40 road games, they successfully covered the point spread only 18 times. And that's good for just 45% in that particular category. Now, the Sixers are also in the bottom 10 in the league in road scoring, and they make just 75% of their foul shots collectively as a team. And aside from a monster series from a truly generational talent in Joel Embiid, Philly's point guard Ben Simmons, he's averaging only 8.5 field goals a game on average in the playoffs. The guy just doesn't shoot the basketball. Most of those field goal attempts are drives through the lane. And even more baffling than that, the absurdly well-paid Simmons is making 32% of his free throws in the 2021 postseason. And once again, let me remind you, this guy's averaging over 34 minutes a game in the postseason. He's an absolute liability. That's 4 more minutes than Joel Embiid. Once again, you got to get this guy off the court if you're Philadelphia, because essentially Atlanta's only having to prepare for 4 players almost the entire game. He's getting way too many minutes. The guy hasn't made a 3-pointer in the playoffs. Now, total-wise, like I just said, if Ben gets his usual minutes, the Sixers are basically playing with just 4 scorers. And, of course, 3 out of their last 4 ball games with Atlanta stayed under the total. They're also 24-16 to the under in their road games this season. Meanwhile, the Hawks are 24-16 to the under at the State Farm Arena this season. They're also 46-36 to the under for the entire year. I'm going to lean toward the underdog Atlanta Hawks +3 and the under 221.5. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final matchup. It is going to be Jazz versus the Clippers, Game 6. And that's going to be a 10 o'clock Eastern start time. Clippers up 3-2 in the series. That in mind, though, it's still the Jazz who are the 1.5-point favorite on the road, facing elimination. Totals at 220 even. Now, the Jazz are really struggling with injuries. Mike Conley and Donovan Mitchell are both questionable for tonight's contest. And, of course, that's a huge blow to a historically good Jazz team this year in the regular season. It's been kind of an all-time year for the Jazz with regard to the regular season. They were great this year, but unfortunately, injuries really hurting them right now. Utah's also lost their last 3 straight to LA in this series, and they failed to cover the point spread in 4 out of their last 5 outings. And although the Jazz were absolute covering machines for the majority of the regular season, just keep in mind that they've covered only 20 out of their 40 road games overall for the year. And for as good as these guys have been this season, I'll tell you what, these guys really tended to break down defensively late in games. They're in the bottom 10 defensively in third quarter points allowed on the road. They're also in the bottom 10 in fourth quarter points allowed on the road as well. Now they're taking on a Clippers team who covered a lot of numbers here in the postseason. LA's gone 80% against the spread in their last 10 ball games. And they also went 6-4 ATS in their last 10 meetings with Utah. Now, Los Angeles also played their best basketball in the Staples Center this year. The Clippers are currently 29-13 straight up on their home court. And they're leading the NBA in shooting the 3-ball. And, of course, the big area of concern for most bettors on this particular game is the absence of Kawhi Leonard here this evening. There's going to be probably a lot of reaction to that, with him being out. But just keep in mind, the Clippers were able to put up 119 on Utah in Game 5 without Kawhi Leonard. They played Game 5 completely without Kawhi. Everybody thought I was crazy because I picked them to cover without Kawhi. And they were all wrong, and I was right. Plus, once again, big-time scorers in Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley for Utah, they both might not play here this evening. Now, Los Angeles still has Paul George in the lineup here tonight. He's scoring over 25.5 points a game in the playoffs with 9 boards and 5 assists. George is also drilling 90% of his free throws, so expect a big game out of him. Meanwhile, Reggie Jackson's draining nearly 44% of his three-pointers in the postseason and averages 15 a game. Los Angeles is the number 1 defensive rebounding team in the NBA, and they also allow just 107 points per contest. Now, total-wise, oddly enough, I do think this one has the capability of getting over. 4 out of the Clippers' last 6 ball games got over the posted total. They're also 22-20 the over as the home team. Meanwhile, the Jazz saw 8 out of their last 10 ball games get over the number themselves. I'm going to lean toward the underdog LA Clippers +1.5 and the over 220. And with that, guys, now it's time for our quick pick recap, powered to you by my Patreon website. I like Atlanta +3, under 221.5. And I like the LA Clippers +1.5 and the over 220. And one final reminder that we are 2-0 in our last 2 Major League Baseball tier package picks on my Patreon website. We're also 4-1 in our last 5 Major League Baseball tier package picks in that very same category. And with that, guys, now it's time for some shout-outs to our top 10 YouTube commenters over the past couple of days or so. Shout out to Living the Dream. Love that name. Love that. Living the Dream. King Jackson, Tyler Dorso, Ronald Orr, Sean Scott. Shout out to South Plainfield Striker, Mike Ernest, Aaron Posey. Shout out to Jerry, we the best. Haven't seen you in a while, man. Jerry, we the best. No, Jerry, you're the best. Wow, haven't seen Jerry in a while. And of course, last but certainly not least, got to give a shout out to my good friend, Fernando Coronado. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on Patreon. If you guys do end up getting a membership on my Patreon website. Just keep in mind, Patreon bills you the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. So if you do end up getting a package here today, you're going to get access to that content all the way through the end of June. And as always, the earlier you sign up for a membership in the month, the better. The earlier you sign up in the month, the better it is for you. But hey, if we're hot and we're winning games, I guess it really doesn't matter when you sign up. But once again, Patreon bills you the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. But most importantly, guys, gotta thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. Just a quick tidbit here, that absolute 26-point collapse by the Sixers in Game 5. I was listening to a lot of talk radio, and the sentiment out of Philadelphia right now is that was the second worst loss in the history of Philadelphia sports. The general consensus is number one was the Eagles' playoff loss to the Tampa Bay Bucks back in 2002. Apparently that was the most devastating loss in the history of Philadelphia sports. And apparently this 26-point collapse in game you guys know what I'm trying to say. But apparently Philly's loss in their last game, the 26-point choke job, apparently that's the second worst loss in the history of Philadelphia sports. But anyway, guys, that is going to do it for me. Happy Friday to you. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at patreon.com/BrockPage.